Hey, this is Janelle in Rarity. We're a couple minutes before start here, but I'm just making sure that the camera's working and the audio is working. Looks like things are pretty good here. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you today. If people are wandering in early here, this is Why Manifestation Doesn't Always Work, a process perspective. And you are with the Eco-Spiritual Education Center. Let's see, checking my settings here. Making sure that the video is working here. I think it's good. Okay, so it's 5 o'clock. And I'm really excited about this presentation, this live stream. So this is Janelle in Rarity here with the Eco-Spiritual Education Center. And this is my full moon broadcast. So every full moon, I pick some topic that's on my mind that clients have been asking me about. It's been showing up in the world, showing up in the news, and I dive deeper into it. And this is a free broadcast for you to jump in, get some new information, ask questions, get to know me a little bit here. So today I have a lot of notes. I normally like to write in advance what I'm going to be speaking on and then just riff off of that, let it flow from my memory, check a couple details here and there. But I found that this subject of why manifestation doesn't always work really had some nitty gritty in it that I wanted to make sure that I got right on and didn't get lost in trailing on different subjects. So you'll see me referencing my notes a couple of times here, and I'm seeing some logs pop up here. So, okay, so you might be having a video signal that's not great. I'm not sure. I'm getting notices from Facebook here, but send me something in the comments if that's the case. So this full moon broadcast is a special full moon. This moon will be full at 12:12 a.m. on December 12th, so 12:12 on Eastern Standard Time. So it'll be full at different times in different places, but on Eastern Standard Time, 12:12 on 12:12. And this moon is the long night moon. So that means that it will be full, visible at full for the longest amount of time throughout the whole year. And there's actually a meteor shower tonight. I think it's the Gemini meteor shower, and it will not even be visible because of the full moon. So there's a lot of light tonight. There's a lot of brightness even as we're in the darkest part of the year. And we're also coming to a close in the Gregorian calendar year. So that's the January through December calendar that most of the Western world tends to follow. That's a solar calendar. It's not a lunar calendar. So a lot of the world follows lunar calendars based on the moon. And so the moon cycle doesn't line up with the end of the Gregorian year, but this moon, a lot of people are starting to go inside, reflect on the year that's passed, think about what happened. Hey, Rob, welcome. Good to see you here. And then prepare to go into the next year. So this is a really good time to be talking about manifestation. And if you are somebody who's done any kind of personal growth work, any kind of inner work, you've probably come across this idea of manifestation. I'm going to go into today a bit about what that even means, what we're even talking about when we say that. But I'll introduce myself to you first. So as I said, I'm Janelle in Rarity. I'm the founder of the Eco-Spiritual Education Center based in Beaverton, Oregon, just outside of Portland, Oregon. I'm speaking to you today from my office in Beaverton, Oregon, and I'm always interested in place names and where the place name, hi Heather, good to see you, where a place got its name, how we came to be where we are, and what our relationship with the land is. So I'm speaking to you from Beaverton here, and Beaverton's original name was Chakepi, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that means place of the beaver. So it's been place of the beaver for a really long time. This was the name given by the Atalfati native tribes who lived there, and then the settlers came in and renamed the place Beaver Dam and then renamed it Beaverton. So there's this long history of connection with this particular animal. And I found that interesting also because the last moon cycle, which I didn't mention in my last live stream, was the beaver moon. And it was the time of year when hunters would set traps for beavers. And we're now entering into the frost moon. This is the time of year when it starts to get really cold. We can expect the first frosts to start to set in. And so last full moon of the year and going into this space of manifestation. And so that was all by way of introducing myself. I can't do that without giving you context for where I am and how I relate to place. And I hope you'll consider that in your own process as well. So I'm a process-oriented facilitator or a process worker, and that means I use an awareness method called process work that tracks different levels of reality and different signals in somebody's experience to help a person or a group become more of what they really are. And I also have a long background in environmental studies, particularly sustainable agriculture and permaculture and eco-village design. And I'm also a licensed massage therapist. So I'm looking at everything from the lens of what is it in the body, what is it in the environment, the place where we live, the place where we come from, and how does it manifest in our minds and in our dreaming experiences and in our relationships. I offer this full moon broadcast every month and also a new moon newsletter. So really tracking those cycles, and you can sign up for both of those at my website, www.ecospiritualeducation.com. So for this, if you're watching live today, or even if you're watching a replay later, if you could go ahead and share this if it's interesting to you at any point, if you find what we're doing interesting. I'm offering this for free, and I want people to get this information. So if you'd like to show appreciation for that, I would love it if you would share this, on your page or wherever you are at this time. So today we'll be talking about manifestation, and it's something that people often try to align with moon cycles. So I thought that was really great to, I love the newsletters too, to check in about that. And manifestation in alignment with things like moon cycles or astrological signs, or even just a really big important intention, is only one really small piece of the puzzle. And so, like I said before, if you have been working with manifestation, or if you have been in any sort of personal growth process, you've probably come across lots of different ways to explore this idea of taking something that's in your mind, in your awareness, in your heart, some sort of dream, some sort of vision, some sort of intention, and trying to bring it into everyday physical reality, what process work calls consensus reality, the thing we can all point to and say, yep, that's real, that's happening. So there are, vision board techniques and meditation techniques and, things that people might do with crystals or with objects, trying to bring something from the dreaming world to reality. And if you've done any of those things, you've probably had mixed results. And if you're like most people, you've probably tried those things, and you've either had you've probably had a mix of experiences where sometimes it works amazingly. You paste a picture on the vision board and that thing shows up in your life. Sometimes it kind of works, like something similar to that kind of shows up in your life. And sometimes it doesn't work at all, or you seem like you're going in the opposite direction. And you might experience that there's maybe no rhyme or reason for why it's going one way or the other. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. So it's kind of an alchemical process, right? And sometimes we understand how to perform that alchemy, and sometimes we don't. So today I want to share with you 4 ideas of why manifestation might not work. And then I'll end with a set of questions, so sort of one idea, but a set of questions based on these other 4 ideas to start to bring yourself into greater alignment with your own intentions in a much deeper way, in a way that's not this cookie cutter I want this, I send it out to the universe, I get this, but something that's a lot more rich and deep and takes you into a deeper place in yourself and brings things into your life that are more aligned with the depth of your process. So I'll talk about that at the end. So let's go into the 4 things that are reasons why manifestation might not always work. And so the first idea is from process work, and it's this idea of high dreams and low dreams. And that's where I got the thought to offer this today. As I was teaching a workshop that incorporated high dreams and low dreams as part of the curriculum. And this is so fundamental to everything we do. So process work says that we have a high dream, which is like our absolute ideal of the perfection of what we want to happen in almost every endeavor. So I have a high dream that I offer this talk today, and that many people watch it and enjoy it and share it, and that it changes people's experience of their lives in a way that makes them more rich and engaging, and I get to have fun dialogues with people. And then we have low dreams for the same thing, so the same experience, but we have a low dream for it, like, oh no, I'm, my last workshop or my last course, Facebook cut out right at like a high point, right? So, oh no, I don't want the technology to cut out. What if I don't say what I meant to say? What if it doesn't resonate with people in the way that I want it to resonate with? What if people get upset about something that I say? So that's kind of the low dream of this for me, but we all have that for everything that we do. We have these 2 parts, and the reality usually exists somewhere in the middle. And we can start to align with that awareness on the full spectrum. And it's really important to address this full spectrum quality when you're talking about manifestation. So the culture around manifestation is often focus on your high dream, right? Put on a vision board the thing that you want more than anything, exactly how you want it, and put it on there as perfect, right? And only look at the high dream, and don't let anything from the low dream in. Only look at the high dream. Well, what we do when we do that, from a process-oriented perspective, is we completely marginalize, we completely push away a part of ourselves that's trying to get our attention, and that's actually really valuable, and that might have something really significant to offer. So if we have the high dream, it's great to know what your high dream is. It's great to focus on your high dream. But if you only focus on your high dream and you don't integrate the information from the low dream, then it's A, marginalizing a huge part of yourself, B, potentially setting you up for failure, because that low dream, if it wants your attention, it's going to come in there and get your attention. It's going to hijack your process. So giving attention to the low dream and saying, hey, what is it? What do you want? Like, why do you have these concerns? Is it an inner critic? Is it a real thing that I need to pay attention to? Do I need to do more preparation? Do I need to notice some fine print somewhere? Do I need to have a particular conversation that I'm not having? Or is this a fear, an inner critic that needs to be addressed, not pushed away, but engaged with and brought out into the light? All of those questions become really important with the low dream. And when you can consciously and intentionally connect with both your high dream and your low dream, and you can move between them, you can integrate both of them into the reality that emerges, then you really can manifest something that is functional for you, that is actually aligned with your life, that's not pushing out parts of yourself, and that's not unrealistic, that's not locked on to something that's hopeful when you actually need to be bringing in something that's a little bit more complete. So that's an enormous topic that we could spend a lot of time on, but I want to touch on it because it's a foundational concept that actually shows up in the other 3 points that I want to share with you, and in the questions that I want to share with you at the end. So when I work with people one-on-one on the high dream and low dream, I really go into a lot of depth in different parts of people's lives. But for today, I just want you to get that basic concept. And feel free, by the way, enter questions anytime while I'm talking, and I'm happy to pause and answer any questions that you have. So the second reason that manifestation might not always work. And this is so often not addressed, but it's your social or situational rank. And what I mean by that is we all have different types of rank in our lives, right? We all have places where we have a lot of rank or authority, awareness, capacity, whatever it is, and places where we don't have a lot of rank. Everybody has both in different parts of their lives. And so if you are somebody who has a typically fairly low rank in your life in social, structural social situations. So for example, one of the things that I work with here is if a woman is in the workplace and is not being paid the same that a man is being paid, that's a real social rank. It's a common problem. It's not an individual problem. It's a social problem. It's an extra step that she has to overcome to be able to just be on par with her colleagues, right? And this is even more of an issue for women of color. They're paid even less than white women, than Caucasian women. And that is something that has to be addressed directly when we're talking about manifestation, is these issues of social rank, where if you say, okay, I really want this really high paying job, but the actual social structure says that it's going to be harder for you to get there, then it's really important to address the social structure at the same time that you're addressing your intention, your manifestation, what you're working towards. And that's really important so that you don't go into a manifestation process worried about failure, or go in and feel like you're failing if you feel like you're swimming upstream in a situation where there are very real social structures that make it harder for you to get there. That doesn't mean that you can't get there. That just means that you have to be kind with yourself and aware of those structures and work consciously with those structures to get there. There's a really meme that I've seen come a lot of different directions in my life lately, and I've seen it attributed to the activist Rachel Cargill, and I've also seen it attributed to Corinna Rosella at Rise Up Good Witch, and I don't know where it came from, if it came from one of those two women or from someplace else. But the meme is, maybe you manifested it, maybe it's white privilege. And so the idea there is there's a greater ease to manifestation if you have a social rank, if your race, if your class, if your gender, if your income, whatever it is. Income's related to class, but it's not necessarily the same thing. Even if the place where you live, whatever, if your physical capacity, for example, is a very high rank, then manifesting something, creating something that you want is likely to be easier for you because there's a lot of social backing. So again, that doesn't mean that it's not possible if you don't have that high social rank, but it means that if you keep banging your head up against a wall and feeling like, why am I never getting there? It's really important to address those issues of social rank. And so a really good example of that I want to share is from the 2008, the subprime mortgage crisis, right? There was a situation there where lots of people were being offered mortgages that really weren't in alignment with what they were financially capable of. And there were these predatory lenders who knew that they would make money off of offering these mortgages to people who really weren't quite able to afford them. And a lot of people lost their homes in that situation. And that's a great example of looking at manifestation from the perspective of social and I was going to say environment, but social rank, right? So if you have high social rank, you can offer mortgages to people, you can buy up houses, you can do a lot of different things with this higher economic rank. If you don't have the rank, but you're fed this high dream, the American dream of home ownership, and you can never get there, you can never get there, and lots of things in the past have gone against you getting there. There might have been redlining, there might have been racism, there might have been multiple generations who have had to work really hard and not be paid fairly for what they were doing behind you in the beginning. And then you're offered this high dream that says, jump on in. you're likely to go for it, but the social rank situation actually ends up pushing you out anyway. So all of that points to this idea of manifestation actually being a social issue, actually being an issue of social justice and not just an individual issue. And that's one of the things I work with people on in a lot of different ways. And I try to tie that into everything I'm doing, is that inner work is also outer work, and they're inextricable. So if you're doing a lot of outer work, but you're not doing the inner work, you might be doing outer work that's potentially harmful. If you're doing a lot of inner work, but you're not doing the outer work, then you're cycling in your own space, but you're not really creating a larger benefit for the world and ultimately for yourself. So they always go together. So that's the second one. And it's a little bit paradoxical because we have all of these stories about people who are outliers, essentially, in manifesting their dreams, right? So we have these great people like Oprah is a really popular sort of outlier who manifested this enormous dream, right? She went from a very difficult, painful childhood in poverty to being one of the most famous, wealthy women in the world and influential women in the world. And so a story like hers is often cited as an opportunity to latch on to the high dream. And we like those high dreams. We like those opportunities to latch on to the high dream. And it's in a certain way, a way to project like, hey, it's possible for me. It's possible for me to go there. But it's also really important to recognize that this person is an outlier in the grand arc of experience. There are a lot of people who are in poverty, who experience racism, who are experiencing abuse, who somehow don't get to that wildly successful, externally successful place despite all best intentions, despite all best work, because of the system's work on their lives. So it's really important to keep that balance in mind, to set the high dream, to go for it, and to work within the whole system. So what can you do if you're in that position where you're like, hey, I have this high dream and I want to go towards it, and I also want to be realistic about it. Wherever you are, whatever the challenge is, look to the support systems that are available to you, look to the advocates that are available to you, and also be kind and realistic with yourself as you're moving in that direction. So the third example that I want to bring here is why manifestation doesn't always work, is that if the thing that you want to manifest overrides a fundamental need, right? If it overrides something that you know is absolutely a fundamental human need, something that is like love, touch, acceptance, safety, something that is a really deep need that you've found different ways to meet in your life, or that the world doesn't easily help you achieve. For some reason, your family system or your experience in the world hasn't easily helped you achieve that need being met, then whatever you try to manifest, if something in it goes against you meeting that fundamental need, or if something in it tries to happen before you meet that need, you're always going to get backlash. So the third reason manifestation doesn't always work is this way in which it can sometimes override our fundamental needs. So there's a certain kind of spiritual bypass that happens in that, where we say, yes, I'm struggling, or I'm in pain, or I'm lonely, or I have a lot of traumatic experience, and that's all well and good, but I have this high dream and I want this high dream, and I'm going to just focus on the high dream, and I'm only focused on the high dream. That's a little bit of that process of ignoring the low dream. Are there specific steps? I'm seeing a question come in. Are there specific steps I should take in order to better understand myself in the world, my rank and the rank of others, high dream, low dream, privilege, challenge, support systems, etc.? Yes, I'm going to answer that question in a minute. That's a beautiful question. So I'll come back to that shortly. Thank you. So the high dream itself can sometimes bypass the low dream that's actually happening in the moment. And also the low dream is your signal for what needs are unmet. And so if you are in a cycle where you keep saying like, I really want this thing, I'm really going for this thing, and something always comes back and works against you, that's a really good sign that there's an unmet need underlying. And that if you can go back and meet that unmet need, then you can focus in a more realistic way on the high dream. So a fantastic example of that in a book that I'm reading right now that I highly recommend is a book called Hunger by Roxane Gay. And in the book, it's called, let me get the exact subtitle, A Memoir of My Body. And so she's writing the entire time this powerful memoir of her body and the experiences that she's had in her body and the struggles that she's had in her body. And one of the things she talks about is her struggle with weight loss and her experience of having an early childhood trauma and then eating to comfort herself and to feel safe and to feel big in her body, and creating this very big body through this eating process that met this need for safety. But now she's having health issues and a lot of societal issues where people put an enormous amount of pressure and really a lot of hate and judgment towards her as a big-bodied woman, and that she will have this process of dieting or exercising and losing some weight and then feeling, oh, I'm not safe in my body anymore. Now I'm smaller. I got to get big again. And so you can see in that process that need for safety fundamentally isn't met. And her writing's so beautiful because she acknowledges that and she doesn't try to change it. It's just like, that's where I'm at. And I think that there's a lot of power in that for all of us to go to that place of, I just have this need. Like, I don't have to rush it. I don't have to push myself past that. I have this need and I know what it is. And the high dream, quote unquote, like in that example of weight loss, is actually not as much of a true high dream as safety, right? The high dream there really fundamentally is safety. And so if we can look at any place in our lives where we're struggling and see what our fundamental needs are, that is actually more fruitful and more functional than the high dream. A high dream that might emerge from that place is a lot more solid and actually a lot more achievable when we can go in and find out what the needs are. So I want to come back to this question that came in about specific steps in order to understand myself in the world, my rank, and others. So understanding high dreams and low dreams in particular, really looking at every single situation that you come into or every goal that you have or everything that you're working with as what's the best that could happen, what's the worst that could happen, and how can I bridge those two so that I'm not running towards one and away from the other, but that I'm aware of both and I'm integrating aspects of both. So there's a lot of detail in the how of that, but I hope that that's enough as a start to just allow you to take a look at that in anything that you do, and especially anything that's challenging you, and especially anything that's cycling, to look at both and ask yourself about the needs that are being met by both also. Looking at rank and the rank of others there's a lot of work that's been done on that, and there's not enough work that's been done on that. One of my teachers, Julie Diamond, has really dedicated her career to the study of rank. She has a quiz on her website where you can go in and actually look at all the different types of rank that are happening in your life, present, that you have. She also has a book called Power, a User's Guide. I highly recommend it. It's a great way to go to get into the complexity of the ranks that exist in your life, and can be really humbling and also refreshing to see those dynamics at play, particularly when we're talking about something like manifestation, where if you go through a quiz like that and you see, either, I have a lot of high ranks, but I tend to have a low rank here. And actually that tends to sabotage me, right? You can have high social rank, you can have high economic rank, you can have high rank in a lot of areas of your life. You can have high spiritual rank even, but if you have a place where you have really low rank that's not addressed, that you haven't looked at, and it will tend to cycle in your life, that could tend to sabotage your best intentions, your highest dreams, right? Your strongest intentions for manifestation. And addressing that directly, looking at the low dream of that low rank and bringing that into your awareness consciously can really be helpful. And the same if you have a lot of low ranks. If you do this exploration and you discover that you have more low ranks maybe than you even thought, that's often been the case for me, where when I go through structural ranks, I find that I have a lot lower ranks than I tend to be aware of structurally. But because I've done a lot of inner work, and because I've had a lot of social support in my family and financial support in my family at various times in my life, I sometimes don't recognize the low ranks that exist in my life. And so addressing that directly can be really helpful in looking at the big picture of manifestation. So it's a great question. And yeah, I mean, on an individual case by case basis, my answer might be a little bit different person by person as well. So doing that inner work and outer work and looking at your different ranks can be really helpful in clearing the path towards things, particularly things that tend to cycle, that tend to repeat themselves, that's something where you feel like you're wanting something and going back to the same thing again and again. So the fourth thing that I want to touch on today on why manifestation doesn't always work, what I think is the juiciest, most interesting thing, and also maybe the most controversial thing, is that it's almost like a glitch in the manifestation process, is the idea of destiny or life path. And that I say it's controversial because everybody will have their own idea of it, right? Everybody will have probably a strong reaction to that even. So I'll share with you my take on it, and part of what I consider to be a process-oriented take on that is that everybody has their own fundamental essential nature. We all have our own way in the world. There are certain it's way beyond personality. There are certain ways that we tend to be. There are certain things that we tend to be drawn to. There are certain paths that we naturally fall into. And I would argue that there's really no changing that. There's no changing your fundamental nature. There's no changing what you're here to do in the world. And the work is really to find out what that is, to find out what the world is asking of you or what the world is putting on you, and what your fundamental nature is, and whether you need to go full on into certain aspects of what the world is asking of you, whether you need to really cut ties with certain aspects of that, and how you can cultivate what's really, really true for your nature and your path in the world. So process work, which has a lot of its roots in Jung's work, Carl Jung, the dream analyst, or the analyst from Switzerland, it is rooted in this idea that we have an early childhood dream or dreamlike experience that tells us something about our relationship to the world and guides us in a particular direction, whether we're aware of it or not. And the work is to become aware of it and to live from that place. So something, for example, for myself that I'm aware of is that my early childhood dream has a lot to do with trying really hard to be good, to like do things right, to do the right thing, to be very well behaved. And that the resolution of that dream, which was utterly terrifying for me as a child, and that continues to sometimes be terrifying for me as an adult, is that my nature is to topple the things that say I should be good and break through the systems that aren't working, and that I have the power to do that. And that's terrifying to me. But every time in my life I try to manifest something that is so good and so well behaved and so the right, correct thing to do, the well-behaved thing to do, that part of my nature asserts itself. And if I don't do it, something from the world does it and says, no, my way is to break through the systems that aren't working and to create something new that's much more alive, that's much more vibrant, that's much more interesting. So everyone has their own way. Everyone has their own nature. And if you do something that's against your nature, you're likely to get away with it for a long time in some cases. But it will show up, whether that's in a health issue, in a relationship issue, in something that cycles through and keeps giving you pushback, in being miserable in your job or losing your job. There's all of these ways that if you're going against your nature, the world from inside and outside will tell you as much. And the fascinating thing to me is that when you're really aligned with your nature, when you're in tune with it, when you're aware of it, when you're following the truth of that path and that nature and that what we might call destiny, that direction that really only you can take, you'll still face challenges, you'll still face difficulties, you'll still face things that seem sometimes insurmountable, but they'll be interesting. They'll have an element of fun, they'll have an element of rightness, they'll have an element of exploration. The challenge will feel right, even if it feels huge. It will feel right. You'll know that it's your challenge. And so I want to offer that as the fourth element of how we might work against our fundamental natures in the process of trying to manifest something that's not in alignment there. And it will feel like failure, but it's not failure. It's actually a success. It's actually a success to not manifest something that is not in your best interest on the most subtle, deep, dreaming level of who you are. So we've talked about high and low dreams, and I've woven that into all of the other aspects of this conversation. We've talked about social rank. We've talked about addressing your fundamental needs. We've talked about the idea of your destiny or your true nature. All of these four things can play into why an effort at manifestation might not always work. And sometimes you say to the universe, you want something, and that thing really easily shows up. Sometimes you work at it really hard and it never shows up. When I work with people one-on-one, I help unravel all the reasons that might be happening in that way. But because we can't do that level of detail here in this kind of setting, because this is more of a teaching and conversational space, I want to offer you a few questions that you can ask yourself in your own process to help fine-tune your process around going towards your dreams, going towards your intentions, towards what you want or what you think you want at this time, because that's also a process of getting to know yourself, and what you want might change, and you might be really super grateful that something you thought you wanted didn't actually manifest in the way you thought you wanted it. So the number one question to ask yourself, not number one as in best, but number one as in first question to ask yourself is, what is my high dream? Which is usually the thing that you're like pasting on that vision board, right? The thing that you're focusing on, and getting really, really detailed about it. And then asking yourself, what's appealing about that? Like, why is that my high dream? What is so interesting about that? What need do I believe that meets in my life? Get clear on what need that meets in your life. And then come back to, what is my low dream? So that's the second question. What is my low dream? And this, as I mentioned before, is really almost a more essential question when you're looking at manifestation, because it's often avoided, it's often pushed aside. And when you push that aside, if it wants your attention, it's going to come in and get your attention. You're not going to like how it comes in to get your attention. So get to know it. Get to know that low dream, address it, find out if it's the place that you're living right now. Do you want the high dream because you're living in the low dream? And don't look away from the fact that you're living in the low dream. understand it as you move towards the high dream and understand the structure of the low dream. And if you're in the low dream at this time, acknowledge the pain and the grief of being in that space, right? Give yourself some space to acknowledge that sometimes it just sucks, right? Sometimes you're just in a place that you don't want to be. Third question is to ask yourself about that social rank and see if that is working against your high dream or keeping you in your low dream. And see if there are inner voices that agree with it keeping in your low dream, you in your low dream. So if you have this idea of, I want to be a CEO of the company that I work for, and that's your high dream and that's what you're working towards, and then you discover that you have a low dream voice, an inner critic that's constantly saying to you, well, you can't be because you're not smart enough. You can't be the CEO because you're not good enough. You're not capable enough. Nobody wants you to do it. If you have that inner critic, if it's not addressed, is going to work against you moving towards that no matter how much you focus on the high dream. You have to turn and face that inner critic. And that's part of the social rank issue. So if there's because that critic will come from a bully, right? From an external voice from the world that at some point, whether it was a parent, whether it was a social system that said to you that a person who has your intellect, a person who looks like you, a person who dresses like you, a person of your gender can't have the thing that you want. So look to that bigger social picture and talk back to that voice, right? Say to it, hey, here's what you need to know. If you have something helpful to tell me, great, tell me the helpful thing, but otherwise, like, I don't need your input on this. And look for services that are available. Like I mentioned before, see if there are free legal services available, if that's helpful. See if there are support groups, see if there are community centers, social service organizations that are available for your particular cause, your particular space, your particular need. Facebook's actually a great place for that. There are a lot of resources to look for different groups to get you started on your journey there. The fourth question is ask yourself if the thing that you're trying to manifest is what you really want, or if it's a thing that overrides a fundamental need. So if you want this thing because you want to get away from addressing your fundamental need, then it's going to keep cycling back. So really genuinely ask yourself the hard questions about the thing that you want to manifest. Is it taking me away from a fundamental need? Am I afraid to even admit that I have this fundamental need? And then come back to that place of destiny, your personal path, your personal nature. For some people, that's incredibly clear. And for some people, that's a life's work to understand. So that's not a simple cut and dry question, but you might get an intuitive hit on that. If you say, is this aligned with the real truth of who I am? Not who I think I want to be, but the real truth of who I am. The feedback you get from that might be interesting. So again, this was a little bit of a heady conversation, a lot of information all at once, but I hope there was a useful gem in here for you. And if you liked it, please share it. If you want more information, my new moon news, my regular full moon live streams, and a lot of other great stuff, go to ecospiritualeducation.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there. And I hope you have a great evening and happy full moon.